Joe, thank you so much for jumping on a call, mate. It's so cool to have you here for another BitBite interview. So thank you so much for jumping on.
My pleasure, mate. It's good to chat. And I'm sorry to keep you up, as I know that it must be, what is it, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in Australia right now?
No, it's 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
So you're just delaying my dinner. That's all. I'll allow it.
Sorry, mate. We'll make this quick.
Yeah. 10-minute interview. No, awesome. Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, man. It's going to be a really awesome interview. Um, Before we kind of jump into any of the questions, can you give viewers a bit of a brief introduction on yourself, how you got into Bitcoin, like your orange pilled story, etc.?
Sure. Thanks, mate. Yeah, and appreciate the invitation. It's always cool to connect with people all around the world and
Absolutely.
realize that there's other mentalists living in countries thousands of miles away. So that's
Yeah.
wicked. So I'm Joe. I go by Joe Nakamoto on socials because I have a very, very common English name, which is Joe Hall. And for the past couple of years, I've been making Bitcoin-related content for Cointelegraph, mostly in the form of journalism. And yeah, my orange pill sort of story was that, well, I first used Bitcoin to buy narcotics in like 2011, 2012. With the best mate of mine, who's actually still really into Bitcoin and is far smarter than me. He got the Bitcoin thing straight away, but it took me another like 8 or 9 years before I finally came around to it because I mean I had loads of different touch points. Like there was a guy in Lisbon where I live who had this amazing wetsuit and this amazing like surf gear in early 2018. I was like, how do you get all this stuff, bro? Because it's rare that you have someone. He was wearing like a Patagonia wetsuit, which is like 500 euros, and he had like a top of the line board and all that. And I don't know, it was just very impressive. And basically he got that through the bull run of 2017 and was telling me that no, the bull run's going to come back around, all this sort of stuff. And I was like, still sounds very scammy. And then it took until 2019 when I was living in the Ivory Coast and my driver, Guillaume, I had a driver because it was just normal to have a driver. It wasn't I wasn't like the fucking king of the Ivory Coast or anything. He was explaining that he was receiving money from his son in Paris via this thing called Bitcoin. And I was like, bro, that's a Ponzi scheme. What are you doing? Let me tell you how you're wrong. And eventually over lots of drives, I was like, oh God, I'm so wrong about this thing. And I properly sort of swan dived down the rabbit hole back then. But it took until sort of late 2019 to like properly get it. I don't know if you remember the run up in 2019. There's like the run up from like 3K to like 10K, then it crashed. Obviously, I was the guy that was buying all the way up and then sold the bottom of when it crashed because I just didn't, you don't have conviction at that point. It takes you a long time to, or at least it took me a long time to probably have conviction. And then, yeah, by the end of 2019, I was like, okay, what is going on with this thing? Because it started to go back up again. And I was like, who are all these losers that are continuing to buy this thing? It's clearly going to crash again. And yeah, then losing my job at the start of the 2020 or COVID pandemic was like the final sort of nail in this coffin, which by this point was probably more nail than coffin, as I had so many reasons to learn about this thing. And that's when I guess I was properly like orange pilled, and that was when I just could not stop talking about it to my friends, family, partner, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, and now for the past I guess it's 3 years now that I've been properly working in or around the space. Obviously helping out with the Orange Pill app. I know you had Brian DeMint on last week. Great interview, by the way. And
Thank you.
just trying to help other people understand Bitcoin, learn about Bitcoin, realize that Bitcoin is not just for drugs or drug dealers, and that it's a wonderful tool that hopefully will play a really important role in defining a century and defining human progress for the rest of time, really. It's going to be here when we're all dead, isn't it? So yeah, that's kind of my
Yeah,
little Orange Pill story in a nutshell.
that's awesome. It's so cool hearing like so many different orange pill stories, and a lot of them are like even Brian's was as well around this idea that started off not being a fan of Bitcoin or trying to like actively disprove it, and that's what was your orange pill story. It's hilarious how like often I'm hearing that. It's an interesting trend. For people who do probably know you, they'll know you from Twitter and also your YouTube channel as well, which is where you kind of go into the streets in different cities and you speak about Bitcoin with just complete strangers. What inspired you to start that YouTube channel?
I think that's very generous of you to say that people will know me from my YouTube channel. But let's be honest, my YouTube channel has like a couple of hundred subscribers. I mean, I would love
I
it
knew
to do
you
a
from
lot
there.
better. Oh, thanks, mate. That's kind. Genuinely, you didn't know me from Twitter. You knew me from YouTube.
No, no, no. I knew you from Twitter, but I saw like I already was following you on Twitter, but I saw
Yeah,
on my
this is what I mean.
YouTube
Yeah.
recommended like your videos, and I was like, oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
right.
Oh, I'm following that guy on YouTube, on Twitter.
Oh, oh, sick.
Went full
Okay,
circle.
it's
Yeah,
oh man, we need to. It's working. You know the Anakin meme of
yeah,
him in the pod racer.
yeah.
But yeah, I wish I'd known earlier to like build up a YouTube sort of channel. But I don't really like editing. I'm not very good at it, and I get a lot of people to help me to do it. The reason, and this sort of links into your question, but the reason why I started doing the giving out Bitcoin in the streets. It's not always just that. Like I realize that viewers will get eventually bored of that, but it's just ways of showing that we're still early, that people don't really understand Bitcoin, and Bitcoin adoption varies wildly, like around the world, like dramatically around the world, and also to try and orange pill some people. But basically, if we rewind to was it early 2022? The WEF, so the World Economic Forum, was taking place in Davos that year. And it was the first year in its history that it hasn't taken place in January, because usually it takes place when it's snowing at the WEF. Why do they do that? Well, because it makes this elite, very like hard to access conference become even harder to access. Like try to climate protest when it's -15 outside and at 2,500 meters. It's just, climate protesters aren't the wealthiest people in the world as well. And, the average hotel there is like, I don't know, 400 euros a night. But either way, they did it in May this year because of COVID restrictions or whatever. And I went there with Cointelegraph to report on the fact that the crypto sphere was taking over the WEF, which is true. There was like 1 inch were throwing huge parties. Shitcoin number 2 were throwing other parties. Shitcoin number 3, I don't actually remember the name of a lot of these shitcoins, but they're all there. And they're all trying to convince, the world leaders that that crypto is the future. There was also like Plan B. So, Lugano is now like this Bitcoin city in Switzerland. They were there. So I was hanging out a lot with Paolo Arduino from Bitfinex and Tether, who was there. And there are some Bitcoiners that go to the WEF, which is actually quite interesting. And while we were there, we were doing interviews with all these sort of key opinion leaders in the crypto space. And we started to realize that there was a big sort of disconnect between people that wanted to talk about it and the people that didn't want to be seen associated with it. And yet at the same time, all the crypto events and all the crypto parties were like the cool parties, where because you had like, I don't know, Facebook or Meta back then hosting a party, but everyone really wanted to go to the crypto event because the crypto DJ event was where, I don't know, there'd be more like cool stuff, younger people, maybe even some women, that sort of thing going on. But we wanted to sort of capture that on camera. And so me and the video team, the director, a guy called Jackson, was like, why don't you try to engage people on the street, do talking head style interviews with people and try to get them to talk about Bitcoin. And the result of that was just really, really surprising. And that video is still on YouTube. It's on Cointelegraph's channel. It wasn't on my own channel. And they called it Crypto Street. And it was all about, the view from Davos, and lots of people were trying to, tell me that Bitcoin was a scam. Lots of people didn't want to talk to me. And obviously Cointelegraph wanted me to talk about crypto, but I only care about Bitcoin. Like I'm Bitcoin only. I was like, no, I'm just going to talk about Bitcoin to people. And I had a big B on my jumper. And I was like, oh, do you know what this is? You know what this B is for? And some people were actively trying to troll me. Like one dude was like, oh, it's Bugatti. Oh no, it's Bentley or something. I actually misheard him, which is the intro to the video, which I'm not going to say on camera right now because it's very explicit. But it got me thinking, like, this is a really cool way of embarrassing myself, pushing myself on my comfort zone, but also for the viewer at home. Like, I think it's entertaining. I think that you get a better sense of what's going on in a place or a country based on people's reactions to me. And then I realized, oh, okay, well, what if I was to give out Bitcoin to people? Because then you really get a reaction. Because if people are saying no to free money, then there must be seriously like something wrong with with the world or with that thing that you're giving out. And so I pitched Cointelegraph with this idea and said, I think that this sort of video idea has legs. We could do more content creation around this. And they weren't interested. So I was like, well, I'll just do it myself. And so anytime I traveled, I was like, okay, I'll set up my little content creation camera and just like, try to work out ways to doing it. And so I did it 3 months later in Gibraltar. And the reason why I did it in Gibraltar was because they had a bunch of bars and cafes accepting Bitcoin over Lightning. And this was, 2021. So Lightning was, I mean, people say Lightning is still early, but for like, it was Costa Coffee. Do you have Costa Coffee in Australia, by any chance?
I don't think so. No.
Good, keep it out.
I,
You don't want it there.
there you go.
Yeah. It's like the UK sort of Starbucks, like crappy coffee, but it is the nation's favorite coffee somehow. And because Gibraltar is like a former British, well, it's technically a British overseas territory, so it does still like belong to the crown. I don't really know how it works and I've had it explained to me several times now through like ministers and important people in Gibraltar, but I just still don't get it. Anyway, I thought, okay, well, I'll talk to the Gibraltarians about Bitcoin and see what the vibe is. And it was quite positive. And I think it's because Gibraltar is quite like a financy place. There's obviously these places that are accepting Bitcoin. And that also gave credence to me saying to people, oh, I'll give you this. And you can actually spend it at Costa or Clinton Cards or Hotel Chocolat just down the street. And so that was like my sort of first touch point doing it. And then from then I was like, okay, let's do this all around the world. And you get the wildest responses. And I mean, I learn a lot about the area that I'm in. I learn even more about Bitcoin and the way to educate people about Bitcoin. And I also learn a bit about myself too, because I mean, ultimately it's a personal journey too. And I wouldn't do it if it was just for the community, because I'm not, I don't know, that's not my vibe. Like I also obviously get something out of it myself. I mean, I get personal development, but I lose money doing this because obviously every time I give out money, I am giving out my own money. Like I found some sponsorships and some ways of covering it. Matteo, if you're watching, the offer is still there. Matteo is the
bleep that out. All of
it. Matteo is the founder of the Orange Pill app, the company that I'm an advisor for. His idea, his company. But what was I going to say? It's about the money side of things. Yeah, it's as I mentioned in the preamble to this call, I'm not very good at editing, and I'm not sort of interested in learning that, although it's a skill that I need to definitely develop. So yeah, I end up just filming it and spending a few hours in the streets on a Saturday afternoon. Usually it's off the back of a conference, so I'm usually a bit hungover and knackered, and the last thing I want to do is speak even more about Bitcoin. But the result is always like, that was like actually really useful, really cool. And I can write about it for Cointelegraph. I can share it on YouTube. I really hope that it inspires other people to just, talk to their, I don't know, gardener, hairdresser, taxi driver, whatever it is, about Bitcoin, and just sort of answer a few of their questions. We don't have to be like, you must be orange pilled, but we can just ask questions and be curious and show a bit of interest in someone's life or passion or hobby or whatever it is, and maybe link that to Bitcoin, because that's sometimes a cheeky way of getting Bitcoin in there. Like, oh yeah, you're into, I don't know, you're into this podcasting stuff. Do you know you could stream sats thing there? You could actually earn income from all over the world. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, how do you do that? Oh, it's this thing called Bitcoin. Oh, I don't like that. And then you build from there. Anyway, I've rambled on a lot there like a madman, so I'll let you come in.
No, it's perfect. You're so right. Like saying the B word is sometimes like such a threatening thing for people. Like when I was watching your videos, like firstly talking to random strangers, it's like the most terrifying thing. So it's really cool in the comfort of my own home being able to watch that and watch someone else do it, because I would be way too scared to do it. But like I also like talking to just even family and friends. Sometimes I will just like I used to just avoid talking about Bitcoin because of the response or the questions that get asked. And sometimes it's like exhausting having to run through it all the time and explain it and why it works and all that. Now working in Bitcoin, it's like almost impossible to like go to a family gathering and some like grandpa or uncle be like, oh, you work in Bitcoin, how does that? Yeah, like, so I pretty much can't avoid it now. But yeah, like you.
But that's good. That's good as well, though, isn't it? Right, because that means that now you're known as the Bitcoin guy. People come to you, which is, I mean, sometimes you're like, come on, mate, can I not have a night off? Can I not just like get drunk with the rest of you and like dance or whatever it is? But I found that with some of my girlfriend's social group is that because they know that I'm like the Bitcoin guy, they will come loaded with questions to like a meetup we have, and they'll be like this sort of like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, everything okay. Anyway, this Bitcoin thing. So what wallet should I be using? And you're like, oh, mate, this isn't a Bitcoin like consultancy meeting. I just wanted to hang out. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword,
It definitely is for sure. And your videos, they primarily focus on like onboarding strangers to Bitcoin through the Lightning network.
Yeah.
Why do you choose to use Lightning? Like, what is it about the Lightning network that enables everyday people to use Bitcoin so easily and quickly?
Well, I hope Dan Held and all the OG sort of hodler Bitcoiners aren't listening to this, because they're like, oh, Bitcoin is like crap for payments. You shouldn't compare it to PayPal. But the Lightning Network literally is better than PayPal. Like it's the best payments mechanism we have.
Yeah.
And I find that when you're introducing someone new to Bitcoin, and they've got this, a lot of the time they've got this preconceived conception of Bitcoin as being like slow boomer tech or like techie nerdy stuff. And it becomes sort of intangible and hard to sort of imagine. So if you can get them to download a wallet in literally 2 seconds, start receiving money in 2 seconds, and better yet, you can tweet that QR code. This is like the cherry on top for me. If you tweet out that QR code and people from all around the world start sending you money, that's when you literally see the cogs turning and their mind is slowly getting blown. You're like, yeah, I mean, you cannot do that with Bitcoin base chain because it's not fast enough. It's certainly not fast enough at the moment. Whereas with Lightning, also with a lot of the apps now, they're realizing this. And like Wallet of Satoshi, it's a great big green tick. With Coin Corner, it's a giant lightning bolt that happens on the screen. Yes, these are custodial wallets and we should all hold our own keys. We shouldn't be shilling these things. But I think that as an entry point into Bitcoin, into learning about it, I always tell people, you've just become a bank. But just like a bank, or just like the money in your bank isn't yours, the money on this app isn't yours either. You need to take custody of it. But as a visual sort of demonstration, I mean, we all love that. It's like from kids, like I don't know, from my like school days, I always remember the better teachers that had those visual things that like wowed you. And this is a thing that literally does wow people. And I've got the receipts to prove it on my YouTube channel. Like a lot of people generally go, wow. But then a lot of people do stutter after that and say, wow, but how do I get the money out of it? And they're like, oh, fuck. Because they fail to grasp that like digital money is a thing. That happens a lot in Africa where they don't have digital banking the way that we do. Like we're used to in the Western world or in Australia, New Zealand, whatever, we're used to sending money over SMS or over PayPal or Revolut or whatever it may be. But in Africa, because cash is still king, they haven't had that sort of leap to the digital realm. And so they're like, oh, but I need the Satoshis to be like cash Satoshis. So if anyone's listening to this and thinking, oh, I want to find a way of doing Satoshi banknotes, definitely do it. It will fly in a lot of sort of developing countries around the world. But yeah, to go back to the question, yeah, the Lightning Network is it's fast, it's fun, it's got that visual engagement to it, and I mean, who doesn't want free money, right? And I know that the Winklevoss twins and the sort of OGs in Bitcoin in 2011, 2012 used to literally give out 1 Bitcoins on piece of paper, like a paper wallet, and that was their way of sort of onboarding people. But that requires you to type in this long string of letters and numbers or scan the QR code to then put it onto your wallet. And it takes 10 minutes and it's slow. And I don't know, I think that you'll get through that process, you'll get the real keynos and possibly the nerds or the techie enthusiasts. Whereas with my process, I hope that it's more mainstream. And my big thing with Bitcoin was like, I wish I'd learned about it earlier, but I'm just not cool or techie or like intelligent enough. And I feel like if we're going to get it to be more mainstream, it needs to be more approachable. And what better way than just standing in a street and giving out some Bitcoin to people? It's quite fun. So yeah, that's kind of why. And also, I just find the Lightning Network is just wicked. Like if we didn't have it, I wouldn't be as bullish or as into the sort of Bitcoin as a whole. I know that it does have a huge amount of issues, and like with channel jamming and with all the attacks that you can do to Lightning, and the fact also that I don't know how it's going to grow and then avoid there being like the motorways of sats, getting congested on those sort of those routes or those paths, which will just naturally become more congested. I don't know how that's going to be solved in the future, but I'm not techie, so I'm quite keen to just sort of follow how that evolves. And I do that with my job at Cointelegraph. Like I write a lot about Lightning, and I write a lot as well about the fact that a lot of Bitcoiners do not use Lightning. Like I don't know if you've used Lightning. I mean, you receive
Of
Lightning,
course.
don't you, for your have your
Yeah,
shop?
yeah.
I'm guessing you use Lightning. Yeah.
No, I prefer it. I think it's incredible. It was also, yeah, the same with me. Like I have only just realized that there are Bitcoiners who genuinely don't know about Lightning, as well as don't use it. which just like blows me away because I feel like it's the most important aspect of like the Bitcoin ecosystem, most usable as well.
Usable, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my favorite videos of yours, I watched it again before we caught up today because I just wanted to refresh it in my mind. It's so funny. It's when you go to a bunch of different businesses, I think in the UK and some other places as well, and you take a photo on your phone of the payment. The Lightning terminal with the QR code, and you post it on Twitter, and you're like,
Yeah.
you're so confident, and you're like to the business owner, oh, someone on Twitter is going to pay for this. It's going to be so cool. And then you're sitting there for like, I don't know, it's probably only 60 seconds, but I'm sure for you it felt like 20 minutes. And you're sitting there and just like the change in your face is the funniest thing because you're like, oh shit, is this actually going to work? Is anyone going to pay? And there was this one guy who was like, obviously never heard of Bitcoin or whatever else. And you're doing it and he's like, you looked confident, not so much anymore. And then the payment finally comes through and his face just like glows. It's hilarious.
It was in Northern Ireland. It was in Roots Cafe in Belfast. I remember that moment very vividly. Yeah, because I mean, every time you do it, like you obviously want to be like confident in doing these things, otherwise you wouldn't do it in the first place. But as it starts, you're like, oh shit! But like, what happens if no one does want to do it? And I do like effectively get rug pulled by this thing. And and then he was ripping into me for that, rightly so. You know, he was. But yeah, every time you do it, there's the doubt, and I've done it a few times. I've actually never had it fail on me, which is amazing. Like anytime I've tweeted it out, I've always had someone pay. It's always been about $3. I don't know if anyone. Basically, I tweet out QR codes in the hope that someone on the internet will buy this thing for the person I'm with or for me, to demonstrate the fact that not only does Lightning works, but it does these cool things that fiat can't do either. Like with fiat, you can't take a picture of your receipt or a bill and get someone or get your dad to pay for you at home. And I think the consequences of that, the implications of it are wild. Like, what does that mean about kids that are like going to like on their way to school, or they get caught up, you know, they want to go to the tuck shop and get some sweets, and they just say, "Dad, can you buy me this thing?" Just all you have to do is send them the QR code. They can scan that from wherever. Like, what does that mean about remittance? What does that mean about like charities? Like, if I can just get people in war zones to send QR codes of like send money to this, then you know it fixes so much of our money transfer. And our payments networks, as you know, anyone that's spent any time around them or spent any time bouncing around countries that have different currencies, it's so hard to get money from one country to another. And with Lightning, it's just, well, it's near instant. I always just want to call it instant because it basically does feel super fast. If you do it with two nodes that have amazing liquidity with another, like for example, Wallet Satoshi and I don't know, Phoenix or Moon, then it's like less than half a second. Blink of an eye sort of speed. But yeah, sometimes it is like 3 or 4.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing. And it's also just like fun to use. I find that if I'm ever, I don't know, browsing some sort of like Bitcoin type online business, if they offer Lightning, I'm so much more inclined to spend money there, even if I wasn't going to, because it's just so much fun to like pay with Lightning. So based on like your Twitter and your YouTube, it's like pretty clear that Bitcoin education is definitely like a big motivation behind kind of what you do. Why is that so important? Educating people who don't know about Bitcoin, and also that you don't even know.
Well, I can't code. That's the main thing.
Good answer.
No, but also like just you know, you want to use Lightning. That's interesting for someone who's your class of 2015 Bitcoiner, right? I know that you like you Bitcoin, then you shitcoin, then you Bitcoin again, like we all do. But like the fact that you've been in it for like almost 10 years. Let's call it 10 years, whatever. The Bitcoiners that I know that have been in this for a long time, they're like base chain maxis. Like even I was doing some video work with a guy based in Colombia who's hardcore Bitcoiner, like sort of not OG, but you know, he's been around this for a long time, and he's also become like one of those sort of subset Bitcoiners that was all like, you know, no seed oils, only like a very sort of traditionalist like view of the world. And I was doing some work with him, and I was like, I'll pay you, and it was like $15, and he was like, here's my address, and I was like, what? like, why am I paying you $15 base chain? Like, you've been in this for ages. Why are you not using Lightning? It's like, I just don't use it. And like people like NVK, he calls like Lightning he used to call Lightning his favorite shitcoin, and he's been in it since 2010 or 11. So I think there's a real like OG element that a lot of newbies, like I would consider myself a newbie, and I've only been doing this for like 4 years or 3-ish years. We're like, wow, this Lightning shiny thing, whereas all the sort of the OGs are more like, oh yeah, base chain, that's where it's at. Like this is decentralization, this is security, this is, you can rely on it. And Lightning is borderline crypto, and that's why it's like less interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the educational element is, I don't know. I mean, I was a teacher for sort of 2 years of my career, and I've always got a lot out of teaching people. And I guess during the pandemic as well, it was the teaching that you did was over a phone screen. Like I still mentor some Chinese kids English. They're like very privileged. They get to do like one-on-one conversations with the native and all this. But I get a lot out of that. And I've always loved educating it in general. And this is, I guess, a way of sort of satisfying that urge that I have to sort of educate and teach. But why is it important? I mean, I don't know if my contribution to the Bitcoin space is important, but I know that the fact that I was educated by podcasts, by books, was super important. But a lot of people don't consume podcasts, and a heck of a lot of people do not read books anymore. So I think there's this real, a lot of Bitcoiners, again, we're like the purist voice or the traditionalist voice tends to be the loudest, but they're all about, read books to learn about Bitcoin. And I'm sorry, but like the average person does not read a book, or the last time they read a book was, a year ago or something. So we've got to find more creative tools to engage with a wider audience. And video content is obviously a great way to do it, because what are the most popular ways of sharing content now? Well, it's TikTok, it's Reels, it's Shorts. And then, more creative ways. That's kind of what I'm trying to get into as well. Like how to visualize this Bitcoin thing is not a bunch of nerds in a back room. It's actually just people that are trying to improve their lives with better money. And that's all it is. So, and also I think there's a narrative sort of shift that I was aware of when I was getting into Bitcoin. And I think we're seeing some cracks on this like glassy surface of like Bitcoin melts the ice caps. Bitcoin's bad for the environment. I mean, just 2 days ago, the Irish Independent, which is like a respected Irish newspaper, had on the front page, the front page and the cover page, like the back page of it, was a farmer stood in a Bitcoin mine like this, going like, welcome to the future or something like that. This is the crypto miner that's using cow shit, turning it into Bitcoin. And I was like, wow, like this is the Irish Independent, like as if they're talking about Bitcoin on the front page. And it was being a little bit mean, but not like horrendously, massively biased.
Yeah.
I mean, to counter that, we have the New York Times piece that was just frankly crap, but the reaction to that was amazing. And I think just changing that narrative, changing the sentiment towards Bitcoin, is just so crucial. And how are we going to do it other than highlighting the cool ways Bitcoin improves people's lives and makes them more productive, or makes them more satisfied and happy, and also it just makes things a lot easier. Why would you use Western Union when you can use Lightning?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I found as well. Like talking to mates and just different people that have asked about Bitcoin, I've found that talking about the technology behind it, or like the real technical aspects of like blockchain, all that, bores the heck out of everyday people, or it's not the thing that orange pills them. What does is like the human experience, like your own testimony of how it's changed your life. Probably not yours, because we know why you used Bitcoin at the start, but like
but I hated it back then. I didn't I was like, this stupid Bitcoin
that's true
thing.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So slow.
Just like just like talking about the real world applications of how it can be used in their everyday life, I think is what's more useful for people when discussing it. That New York article, I when I first read it, I got like halfway through, and then I just had to like take a 10-minute break. Just had to like walk around my room, and then I come back and I was like, oh man, this is like such trash. Like it's so bad. And I knew it was coming out because there was heaps on Twitter about like alerting everyone that this was coming out like a month
Yeah.
before or something. So I already
Yeah.
knew, and I was, yeah. Anyway, speaking of kind of like journalism and more like good journalism, you're a journalist at Cointelegraph, which is super cool. Tell us how you got that gig. How did that come about?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, journalism, as we've just discussed and proved, is kind of dead. You know, I mean, I think first thing is that all journalism is biased, regardless of what you're doing. Like this conversation is biased. Everything has a bias. The fact that we're talking on a screen, we're talking in English, you know, we're two white people, they're all like biases that will influence whatever we say and, you know, where we come from. So I think that first thing is to acknowledge that, yeah, journalism just as a whole is biased. Some is just more biased than others. And the New York Times piece was obviously horrendously biased. And my stuff as well on Cointelegraph is very pro Bitcoin. Like, I am not going to write about how a hacker made off with funds and used Bitcoin as their sort of exit point of that money. It's just not in my interest. I don't want to. I mean, obviously, the anarcho-capitalists or the libertarians would be like, well, yes, but isn't that just proving that Bitcoin is the most effective tool? And you're like, well, yeah, sure. But what I'm trying to do is sort of influence this narrative the best way I can with the sort of the powers available to me, which is the Cointelegraph platform, my own YouTube channel, my own sort of social media voice, to show that, you know, Bitcoin does really cool stuff. So on Cointelegraph, a lot of the content that I write will be, I mean, like the Congo National Park story, you know, about how Bitcoin mining saved Virunga National Park, the oldest national park in Africa. Like, I was speaking to the journalist that went out there and did that, and I was speaking to Sébastien Gouspiou, who's the head of Big Block Data Center Mining, a French company. I know that the MIT Tech Review dropped that piece first, but, you know, I just wanted to actually reach out to the primary source and be like, okay, what's actually going on here? And then I've, you know, done a piece about like how there's one that's like 7 times Bitcoin miners saved the day, just to prove that Bitcoin mining isn't this horrible thing. I'm even writing a Bitcoin mining review document right now about how I heated my flat this winter with a Bitcoin miner. So it's all about trying to, yeah, put a positive slant on all this negative stuff we read about Bitcoin, or the Irish farmer that turned, you know, who saved his farm by turning cow shit into Bitcoin. But yeah, how I got into that gig was because I used to work for mainstream media outlets like Bloomberg and Reuters and Oxford Business Group, and I was doing that all around the developing world. So I was based in like Tunisia. I did 4 months in Tunisia. I did 8 months in Trinidad and Tobago. I did 7 months in the Ivory Coast. I did a stint in Serbia. Did a stint in Morocco. Where else did I go? I can't actually remember where I've lived, but lots of like developing or emerging markets, they call them. And was doing sort of economic analysis and economic research. So we'd meet with like key opinion leaders, we'd meet with politicians, we'd meet with people sort of making investment into giant sort of infrastructure projects. And then we'd compile all that data together into a great big report, which is like an annual report. And then we'd also do sort of newspaper style reviews. So I actually wrote about crypto in 2018, but I was sort of like a little bit pro Bitcoin back then, but not fully orange pilled. But the way in which I wrote it was like, Bitcoin does this, crypto does that. And by the way, Bitcoin's bad for the environment, therefore use this weird green blockchain thing. I don't know what I was talking about. And also my editors were very heavy to sort of influence me in writing about the fact that Bitcoin boils the oceans, all that crap. It's such a compelling narrative, and it really does my nut that it's people still believe it when it's just a rounding error on the world's energy or electricity. So yeah, when I'd already been a journalist for a few years, so when I looked at working in sort of the Bitcoin and crypto space, I was like, okay, my options are Bitcoin Magazine, CoinDesk, or Cointelegraph. And with Bitcoin Magazine, I thought, okay, well, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. You know, people that read Bitcoin Magazine are orange pilled or on the way. People that read CoinDesk are like businessy, more institutional, and also CoinDesk has the biggest reach. It's really important to note. But then Cointelegraph is cartoons, like fun stuff. And they are, I mean, obviously Bitcoin is the focal point, and they talk about every shitcoin under the sun as well. But I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can find my niche and write my, you know, cultivate my own Bitcoin beats within the Cointelegraph platform. And yeah, they interviewed with them and they liked me. And yeah, the rest is history. Here I am 2 years later,
Yeah.
still making content. But I'm doing a lot more camera stuff than I used to, which I'm really, really enjoying actually. And I've realized that it's so much more impactful because, I mean, it's to what we were saying about earlier about education. I can't get my mum to read an article about Bitcoin in Senegal. There's a Senegalese Bitcoin community, because she's just like, why would she read that, you know? But I can send her a video of her son bouncing around this like weird, like sort of paradise place, giving out Bitcoin to people and interviewing people like that. She will watch and she will learn about Bitcoin through that. So once I realized that, okay, I need to create content shareable for my mum, I was like, okay, I need to do more stuff on camera and try to sort of, yeah, break down those barriers. And I can also share it with my normie friends. I shouldn't call them normies, but you know, like my friends that aren't the friends that have a little bit of Bitcoin on Coinbase, but they're not orange pilled, or the friends that are literally staunchly anti Bitcoin. Because I can say stuff like, I'm really proud of this content. I'd love it if you watched it, and I'm secretly orange pilling them. So yeah, there's that element to it as well.
So good. Honestly, before today, I hadn't read any of your Cointelegraph articles, but I jumped on there on your specific page on there, and I read a few of them, and they're cool. I love the way that they're like formatted, especially that it's like a paragraph and then an image or some sort of like different format, and then it's another paragraph of text. Like you were saying before, like our attention span in this like TikTok and YouTube Shorts kind of generation is like, can only consume so much written text before I need like a meme or some sort of like visual cue. So it's really cool how like you format yours as well.
It's interesting you spotted that, because when I started, it was all block text, and I was like, "This is like, who bloody reads this stuff anymore?" Because like, if people read that in a newspaper, maybe, but online, people need that sort of break. And it's just really funny how our brains work. So yeah, we've actually pivoted massively into putting more images, and I'm really keen on reaching out to first-hand sources, so actually taking pictures with them, or with to prove that the interview took place, or just a random thing just to give your brain a break. So it's interesting you picked up on that. So thank you, because I think it reinforces this point.
Absolutely. And like it's the same with BitBite. Like when I'm writing articles on there, I put in like GIFs. That's like my method. I'll put in photos and stuff like that, but GIFs are a good mental break, I think, for people. If they can like read something that's a big chunk of information and then laugh at this like ridiculous meme and then come back and read more. I think it's like it keeps people's attention. And it's also just fun writing articles that way, to be honest. It just makes it less serious and a bit more engaging.
Yeah. Meme warfare, man. Yeah. That's how we get to mass adoption.
That's it. Who would have thought? As a writer at Cointelegraph, obviously you'd probably be more in the loop in like breaking news, Bitcoin related, or just any of the like the most hot topics that are kind of going around. What do you think are the most pressing issues or trends in the Bitcoin space at the moment?
Good question. That requires a bit of thought, doesn't it?
Yeah. Do you want me to show you a meme?
Yeah, I was going to say the viewers that have stuck with the podcast up till now, they're you're absolutely like these guys. You know, they deserve sats.
That's it.
They've got great attention spans, and they're there for the end. But I'm just buying time, by the way. So when it comes to sort of journalism and news, the stuff that gets the most clicks is related to price, or it's related to emotion. So, you know, prices, you know, why is the Bitcoin price up today? Why is the Bitcoin price down today? They always do really, really well. And markets articles generally just work really well, because at the end of the day, the Bitcoin and crypto space is still madly speculative. You know, we treat Bitcoin as saving because Bitcoin is savings technology, but a lot of people treat Bitcoin as speculation and a way of, you know, go to the casino or whatever. So those tend to do really well. And then secondly to that is like emotional stuff. So like fear. Fear is always a great one. I mean, just open your daily newspaper to work out why people like to write about fear. But within the Bitcoin and crypto space, that relates to losing private keys, that relates to a hack, that relates to there's an issue with the Bitcoin code. Do you remember there was like a double spend problem in January 2020? Was it January 2020 or 2021? And the Bitcoin price tanked like 6K in a couple of days, just because people were like, oh, there's a problem with the code. And obviously there wasn't. It was like crappy journalism from some outlet somewhere. Or like the Mt. Gox coin is going to be released soon. Like that caused that blip last week in the price. So it's all those sort of emotive things that really get people going, but they're not the most pressing concerns. They're just the things that get people clicking or whatever. For me, the most pressing concerns are still, education, because we're still trying to get this tool available to more people. I think it's a little bit worrying what's going on in the US with them trying to sort of tax mining and make it less attractive to mine in. I think that we've touched on this a lot already, but sentiment towards Bitcoin is still negative, I'd say, on the whole, and we really need to improve that. So Bitcoin is basically marketing issue, is its most pressing issue. Definitely, that's what I want to say. Marketing. Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing team, doesn't have a CEO, and therefore it can't tell people these are our brand guidelines. This is how we're going to market ourselves to the world. It's just this thing that some people decide to make podcasts about. Some people decide to give sats out on the street to, and some people decide to take to Twitter and tell people to, eat meat and avoid seed oils and like tan their testicles. So it's, when people call like say, oh, Bitcoin's a cult, aren't you? Like all these weird people that are like calling for, the end of democracy. And I'm like, no, Bitcoiners are constantly fighting each other. If it's a cult, it's the least, it's the most poorly organized cult you've ever seen. That has no sense of direction. And that's the beauty of it, right? You can have I don't know, LGBT Bitcoiners in a room with like raging anti-homosexual Bitcoiners, and yet they still believe in this same thing. And it's like, how is that the case? How? Like, even in like Christianity, that wouldn't, those people wouldn't share the same room, would they?
Super interesting. I saw that you wrote a recent article. I think it was the last one you wrote. It was about the currently high Bitcoin hash rate because of ordinal inscriptions. For people listening that maybe don't really know about all of that and what's kind of going on, can you run us through how ordinals affect Bitcoin's hash rate? I guess also maybe touch on what is the hash rate, and are you pro or anti ordinals?
Awesome. Okay, so we'll start a hash rate, which is that's like a hash is basically one computation. So it's one output, or one unit of output from a Bitcoin mining computer, which is often called an ASIC, which is application specific integrated circuit. And so they're churning these things out at a staggering rate. We're talking like millions or trillions of hashes per second, and it's measured in these things called X hashes per second. Back in 2010 or 2009, you could do this on a regular computer, but it was giving out like 1 or 2 hash, So the hash rate back then was probably 60 hashes per second. Just bear with me if anyone techie is listening, because I'm definitely getting these numbers wrong. But the hash rate has gone from, say, 60 hashes per second to 60 exahashes per second. So it's gone up like an order of like 1 million, something. It's gone up a big number because there are more and more computers around the world trying to participate in the Bitcoin network. And they're also, why they're doing this? Well, because they know that every 10 minutes they get the block reward, which right now is 6 and a bit Bitcoin, and 6 and a bit Bitcoin is well over $100,000. So if you win this lottery, like that is wicked, really good stuff. But the cool thing is that the hash rate also secures the network and is sort of what's considered to be the Bitcoin protocol's security level. And the only way to attack Bitcoin is to overwhelm that level of security with what's called a 51% attack, which means that basically you take a little bit more than half of the network and you get it to sort of fight itself. And so why is hash rate going up? Good. Well, it means that the security level is going up, which means that actors looking to attack Bitcoin can't. I mean, they could, but honestly, like, to get the hash rate to where it is right now would be just wild. Like it would require like a country like India to put all of its computational power towards attacking the Bitcoin network, which you'd probably notice because there would be like a huge spike in ASIC sales in India, or they create like a new technology. By the way, sorry, India. It was just because India's like almost the world's most populous country. It's just to visualize it a bit easier. I'm sure there's loads of really good Bitcoiners in India. In fact, 2 of my colleagues are Bitcoiners that live in India. They wouldn't be wanting to attack the network. But it's one of like Satoshi's like genius inventions. Because he was standing on the shoulders of giants, right? He took lots of really cool inventions from lots of different people, put them all together in this thing called like the white paper. But it was, Adam Back's Hashcash. It was SHA-256, which is part of like the hashing algorithm, and it was
B-money.
solving the B-money and solving the Byzantine's general problem. Byzantine general problem, which prior to this moment was a mystery for computer scientists all around the world. And yeah, so that's sort of hash rate. Why is it pumping right now? Well, in a very TLDR way, it's because more and more miners are coming online. So more and more people are plugging their Bitcoin miners into the wall, plugging the Ethernet cable in, and trying to win the Bitcoin lottery. There are lots of reasons why they're trying to do that, but because it's like a network built on incentives, it's because they want to make money. And you can make a lot of money right now as a miner because the price is at a relatively decent level. And also there's these things called Ordinals, which is a really crap name for something that is increasingly popular. And basically Ordinals were made by this guy called Casey Rodamore, is it? I forget his name, a Bitcoin Core developer who 3 months ago, I think maybe 4 months ago, wrote this patch to say that, you know, basically you can make, you can assign data to Satoshis. And obviously Satoshis is the smallest amount of Bitcoin. There's, you know, 21 quadrillion Satoshis in Bitcoin, to the 21 million Bitcoin, because there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin. And he realizes a way to assign like data. Like we could assign this podcast, we could save it as a video and assign it to a SAT on the Bitcoin blockchain. And you could then use like a blockchain visualizer to show that, you know, this was Joe and Bailey's discussion on this date. And because we know that the Bitcoin blockchain is immutable and decentralized and it's going to live on forever, basically, it's a cool way of saving our digital artifact into eternity, question mark, or at least until a very, very long time. So that's kind of cool and quirky, right? Like that's interesting. And so you saw this peak in interest of people putting, I don't know, say you wanted to propose to your partner or your husband or whatever, you could take a picture of that and put it on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's like a romantic thing you could do. Or you could be a degen and start flipping JPEGs, because every one of those those pictures could technically have value. And because this space is full of speculation, this is what happened. So you got lots of people putting really crap pieces of art onto the Bitcoin blockchain. I mean, Adam Back called it like littering, littering the Louvre or something along those lines. Like,
so good.
And so lots of people are very pissed off by this. And why is it impacting hash rate? Well, it's because every time you sort of save an ordinal to a Satoshi or inscribe it on a Satoshi, you have to pay the miners to do it for you. And because there's only a certain amount of block space, 4 megabytes per Bitcoin block, you have to, you know, because it's scarce, supply and demand, the price goes up with more and more, with the increasing demand of you trying to inscribe these ordinals. So like in, I think, February, these guys managed to do a 4 megabyte block space block. So just one thing inscribed on this giant block, which is kind of wild when you think about it. But the reward for that was that the miner earned like, I don't know, 3 Bitcoin in fees. So those guys literally paid 3 Bitcoin to get that one block filled up. And then over the past week, the ordinal space has been pumping because of this sort of change in the code, which is this BRC20 tokens, which has made it even easier for people to upload crap onto the blockchain. I say this a bit like derogatory because I use Bitcoin as money. And so I'm just a bit pissed off on a personal level. But for me, spending stuff, paying stuff, like I get paid Bitcoin base chain and then I send it to Bitcoin Lightning wallets and like to my node and things. And so it's made me annoyed that there are people that are just now putting shit coins onto Bitcoin, because that's essentially what's happening right now. You're getting more and more of these Pepe tokens and whatever it is inscribed onto Bitcoin. And with that comes a speculative fervor, and with that comes more and more block space being consumed. So yeah, the hash rate keeps going up because more and more miners are like, I want that block space. I want the block space fee, sorry, the transaction fee. I want that transaction fee, and I want to participate even more. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on in a nutshell. Did that explain it all?
Yeah, no, that was absolutely perfect. Pretty much spot on. This week, it's been pretty wild. I've kind of been tracking it as well. It's just another reason to use Lightning, by the way. Just another reason to jump on Wallet or Satoshi or whatever else and use that, because can't do it there.
Phoenix.
Phoenix it is.
Non-custodial, and it becomes a
Fantastic.
Lightning node in your pocket. I don't know if you've used it before. It's really good. oh man, you just top it up with a bit of Bitcoin base chain, of course. So it's going to take a while, but then it automatically somehow, I don't know how, creates that into a Lightning node instantly. And so it's you're custodying your own keys, and it's become a Lightning node. So it's adding to the decentralization of the Lightning nodes, and it works really well. The UX is pretty good, and I mean, I use Wallet of Satoshi for my videos, but that's right. You're a Bitcoiner. You understand Bitcoin probably better than I do. So yeah, use Phoenix or your own Lightning node, of course.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. You also post on Twitter as well about you paying for things with Lightning. I saw I think it was yesterday or the day before, you had your wisdom teeth removed. So firstly, it's insane that like for someone who has had his wisdom teeth removed, it's crazy you're talking to me. When I had mine removed, I was like bedridden, looking like a chipmunk, eating like tomato soup.
No way.
Mine was, yeah, I was, when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I have to cancel this. This is definitely not happening. But then you looked so happy in the photo. I was like,
oh, dude, that was drugs.
I know.
A lot of fun.
yeah. So crazy that you're okay. I guess mine was a lot worse. But so you pay for a lot of things with Bitcoin because you paid for that on Lightning, didn't you?
No, it was base chain.
No,
it
was base chain.
This is why I was even more. This is why I was even more pissed off because I got there and I did like the hygienist as well. So I did hygienist first, then I did the wisdom tooth removal, and I thought I was going to get one out, and then they were like, "Do you want to do two at once?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And by the way, I'd done zero research prior to going into this thing, and so my girlfriend was like, "Are you going to be okay later, babe? Like, it's quite a serious thing." I was like, "Oh, it's fine. Like modern medicine, like both my parents are doctors and my dad's an anaesthetist, so I'm used to this kind of chat." I just thought nothing of it. And then when they first inject the anesthetic into the side of your mouth, and you're like, "Oh fuck, I wasn't ready for this." And then he pulled out the first one, and then the bottom one. Like, have you had the bottom ones out?
I had both of them, both bottom ones out, but I was supposed to get mine out. Like I went to the dentist and they were like, "These need to come out. They're like fully horizontal, pushing on your other teeth." And I was like, yeah, all good. It was like a year and a half later, I got them taken out after that. And I had mine, I went under. So they put me under when they did mine. I wasn't even awake.
Whoa.
So like, yeah, you were obviously awake. So that would have been terrifying.
Yeah. Well, no way. The thing that was so like medieval about it is that the first one comes out because it's a smaller root, but the bottom one, it's got a big chunk of bone on it, or tooth, enamel. I don't know what it is. I'm not medical. The second one, he really has to like put the basically like I don't know, clamp on it and just wrench it out. And I was like, wow, this is 2023, and this is how we remove teeth from people. And then he puts it on the tray. He's like, "Do you want to keep them?" I was like, "Yeah, all right." And I walked out, and I was like, "Mate, my heart rate is like, I wear like a Garmin, and my heart rate was like 130." And I was like, "Yeah, that was pretty stressful, but this doesn't feel normal." He's like, "Oh yeah, there's a bit of adrenaline in the anesthetic." And I was like, "Great, because I'm about to punch you in the face, mate." Like, I was super pumped.
Time to make a video, and just like,
yeah, exactly.
Have you heard of Bitcoin?
Can I send you some stats? And then but this is the thing, is that I went out and I was going to try and like lightning pill him afterwards, because I knew that he was really keen on Bitcoin, the owner of the dentist office. And this dentist is like 45 minutes from me. I went there purely because he accepts Bitcoin and he's a Bitcoiner. So I just thought I'd get better care as well, because Bitcoiners look after each other. It's all so like stupid. I got there, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm still confused by this Lightning thing." And then I looked in my Lightning wallet and I realized I'd had an extra tooth. So it was an extra 50 euros. It was 50 euros a tooth plus the hygienist, which must have been like 60 or something. And so the whole bill was more than I had in my Lightning wallet. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just top it up from Bitcoin base chain." And I looked at the fees and was like, "Oh my God." And at this point as well, I was like holding the ice pack on, holding my teeth, being like, "I'm just paying by base chain. We'll do the Lightning stuff another time." And so I went and sat in the, I didn't have a phone wallet that had enough Bitcoin on it. So I went and sat in the waiting room, logged onto like a computer wallet and sent that to him. And I just sent him the transaction ID and be like, "Mate, I'm not going to rug pull you and do a replace by fee thing. I'm coming back here to get the other two done in like a month's time." So yeah, that was why Ordinals yesterday or the day before yesterday really wound me up, because I was like, like
Anyone watching this that thinks it's a good idea to put a image of a wizard made on paint on
yeah,
Bitcoin, like don't, because this is why people are trying to get their teeth
yeah,
ripped out and you're
yeah,
stuffing it up. That's
exactly.
hilarious. Oh
Yeah,
my
so that was why I was
God.
particularly affected. Usually I'm like, oh, cool, miners, like, they're getting rewarded. This is great. But then, yeah, when you're in a waiting room with a bleeding mouth and the
Yeah.
anesthetic is starting to wear off and you're waiting for your Bitcoin to be confirmed, then fuck, yeah, that was
Insane. That's funny. The question I was going to ask in regards to this was finding like local stores and businesses that accept Bitcoin. Firstly, like how difficult is that for you? I guess specifically where you are located now. And then I guess the next question is, what is your method for finding these businesses?
nice. So it is quite difficult where I live. I mean, I live off Bitrefill at the Bitcoin company, and
Yeah,
then a lot of my friends here, they're like the expat or digital nomad types, and a lot of them stack sats anyway. So a lot of the time when we go out for dinner, they'll pay my meal and I'll pay them in sats, for example. That's like a really easy way to live off a Bitcoin standard, because they're like no KYC sats, which is fantastic. And I'm happy because I don't have to spend euros, which I don't really want to spend. Like I have a tiny amount of euros for like emergencies, but most of the time I'll have like less than 800 euros in my bank account, and everything else I have
yeah,
is Bitcoin. I completely live off Bitcoin. And then I mean, I've been coming to this place and I now live here properly for like 4 years. So I'm sort of known in the area, because it's a really small village and there's this like tall, weird English guy who's always talking about Bitcoin that comes in. So I have sort of gained the trust of people around me, which is absolutely crucial in Portugal, because Portugal is quite an old school culture. It's one of the reasons I love it, actually. Like there's a lot of similarities between Portuguese and English culture. And so that, you need to gain their trust before you can even begin starting to try and to orange pill them. Like the coffee shop that I go to that's underneath the co-working space that I usually work at, I've been going there for like 2 years, and I've been trying to speak to them about Bitcoin for the past 6 months. And only yesterday, he's like, "Fine, send me some of this Bitcoin stuff. Let me see how it works."
so
And he was
good.
like, "All right, cool." And I was like, "Can I pay you in that every time then?" And he was like, "We'll see." And I was like, "Okay, it's a start. I'll take it."
Planted the seed.
Yeah, yeah, but that's the thing, and that for me was like a big result, and I don't know, it gives me a bit of purpose as well in the, trying to sort of onboard people into Bitcoin. But the key thing is never shove it down people's throats. Don't be that, like, to steal Brian DeMint's phrase, Bitcoin evangelist that's like going to save people from the fiat economy. It's you've got to meet people where they are, and lead with empathy and
Yeah,
lead with curiosity, and just I mean, the bodyboard shop underneath me, that was quite a funny one, because he knew that I'd been into Bitcoin for a while and he was always a bit curious, but I didn't want to sort of like force the issue. And then 2 weeks ago, oh no, two months ago, sorry, I was like, "Oh, can I pay for this?" It was like a notebook and some surf wax. I was like, "Can I pay for it in Bitcoin?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And it's like 15 euros. And I came back like 3 weeks ago, and the 15 euros is now worth 22 euros. And I was like, "Oh, can I pay for?" And I was like buying some bodyboard flippers. I was like, "Can I pay for these in Bitcoin?" And he looked at his wallet and he's like, "Yeah."
yeah.
Bam, he gets it. Like,
That's
but it's
hilarious.
because obviously the price back then was 18K and now it's 26K or
Yeah,
something. So he'd seen that. Yeah. So it's really easy to orange pill during a bear market when the price is going up.
yeah,
That's another key thing. Don't orange pill as the price is going down, but who knows when the price is going up and down. So it's a tricky one. And oh shit, I
yeah.
forgot the second part to your question. Was it how to
Uh,
orange pill people?
no, how you find these businesses? Is it through BTC maps
Ah,
or
yeah, so all the ones
yeah,
that I've got are on BTC Map, and then I've actually found that it's the usual thing of Telegram groups, Bitcoin meetups, that you discover more places. For example, the dentist that I went to, it was listed on BTC Map, but it just didn't look very legit, and because it just hadn't been reviewed that much and didn't accept Lightning, so I was a bit like reluctant to make the trip over there to do it. And then so I asked the Bitcoin meetup that I'm in Lisbon, like, does anyone know? Because I knew that I needed to get the dentist work done. So I was like, "Well, can I pay for it in Bitcoin?" And yeah, this guy was like, "No, this guy's legit. Really likes Bitcoin." And then the first consultation I did with him, he'd like X-rayed my teeth, and at the end of it, He was like, now, Joe, talk to me about Bitcoin. I was like, okay. And he's like, it's funny. I used to buy a car every 2 years because I thought that was, that was happiness. And now my car is 10 years old and I'm so happy. Lower your time preference. And I was like, you get it, bro. You get it. Like, and he just, the way he went from like talking about dentist teeth stuff to like talking about Bitcoin. And it was like night and day, the difference. But yeah, BTC map, Bitcoin meetups, I don't know. Twitter is pretty useful for that as well. Like, my friend got his girlfriend to accept Bitcoin in Guyana, like this tiny Latin American country north of Brazil. And it was really funny because I tweeted out like, oh, lol, I just sent some money to Guyana. Because I just find it funny that you can just send money to really random places. She accepts Bitcoin wallet of Satoshi. She doesn't expect to get a lot of business. She's just learning how to accept Bitcoin. And her boyfriend, my friend, is really gets Bitcoin. He holds his own keys, he runs a node, that sort of thing. But he's just sort of slowly introducing her to Bitcoin. Anyway, I tweeted this, and a week later, that wallet of Satoshi address has received money from Finland, from New Zealand, from Argentina, because people just put notes back being like, welcome to Bitcoin from like Kuala Lumpur or whatever. And one person sent him $500.
Wow.
Just randomly. Yeah, like half a grand. That's more than the average salary in Guyana. Someone just sent
wow.
to her, just to be like, welcome to Bitcoin. Here's half a grand. And the point of me saying all that was that when I did this, I had various people from Guyana say, oh, so cool that your friend Rick is there. Like, would love to connect with him. And they're now doing a Bitcoin meetup. So
that's so
I don't know how this happened, but like there are clearly lots of Bitcoiners that are alone at home, and they're looking to connect with people in real life. And there is definitely a way to do it. I mean, obviously, the best way to do it, Matteo, is with Orange Pill app.
Yes, this video is sponsored by Orange Pill app. Yeah, chuck that up there.
Yeah.
Our message from our partners. That's so funny. Like being in kind of Bitcoin since 2015, it's really awesome to see how it's developed, especially with businesses accepting it. And also being a Bitcoin business owner that accepts Bitcoin as payment. Like you're saying with that surf shop downstairs, it's like I'll sell a hoodie for $50 or whatever it is, and in 3 weeks' time, depending on what Bitcoin does, it's like, oh, that $50 is $62. I'm like, that is cool. Like you don't get that with normal, USD or whatever your currency is. It goes in the opposite direction. So it's like it's pretty insane that even exists, that we have this currency that you can pay, hold, and like buy things with, and it will go up in value or down, but you hope on the long term, like up, which is super, super cool.
When did you start the business? Did you start the business like October 2022, like peak bear market? Because that would be kind of cool if like you only accepted on the up.
I had the idea in October 2022, and we launched Mr. Satoshi in January this year. So we've been going since the start of this year. Yeah, but it's cool seeing like sales, because the money that like goes in from the like Bitcoin payments and stuff, like it just stays in the wallet. So it's cool that like sales from January, Bitcoin was what, like, I don't know, what was it? Or even in like
20K,
the start of January, it was just starting to go up, wasn't it? So 20K, and like now we're at 30. So it's like it's so cool that for business owners worldwide that we're doing that. If they're holding it in Bitcoin, any sales they've made in like October when it was at 17K or whatever, it's like it's crazy to think that that's even a thing. I saw a few months ago you created it was a short documentary on Cointelegraph's YouTube channel where you traveled to El Salvador with the mission to like spend 2 weeks paying for everything with Bitcoin. It was a really good video. I'll put it somewhere in like a description on this video so people can check it out, because it's definitely worth watching. It's super fun. Tell us a bit about, I guess, like that project, like how you went, and also more about how El Salvador is leading the way globally in mass Bitcoin adoption.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, no, that the videos weirdly had a bit of a resurgence as well. Like although it's on Cointelegraph channel, I'm still interested to see how these documentaries play out. and it went to like 0 to 5K views quite quickly. Like it's a small channel, it's not like millions of subscribers. And then it went, it was like very slow. And then the algorithm picked it up in February of this year, and it's gone up to 25K views now. And I'm really pleased with it. I'm actually quite proud of it because I did it all by myself, and I have no skills in this area whatsoever. It's literally me holding a like travel documentary camera and trying to interview people. I do speak Spanish, and I am used. I lived in Mexico for a bit as a student, and then I did some work there as an adult. Oh, sorry, I was still an adult as a student, but you know what I mean, as my career. So like I'm comfortable like bouncing around Latin American countries. But it was 2 weeks trying to live off Bitcoin in the capital of Bitcoin in the world. And I failed because El Salvador's Bitcoin payments adoption isn't quite there. So the key thing with this video was that I was trying to pay my way around El Salvador using Bitcoin. And I didn't want to go and do what most LARPing Bitcoiners do, which is go to San Salvador and buy a McDonald's with a Bitcoin, and then go to El Zonte and buy a pupusa with Bitcoin with Mama Rosa, you know, the pupusa seller, and then go home and be like, wow, Bitcoin adoption is here, you know, hyper-Bitcoinization is around the corner. And I really wanted to like get out there and sort of ingratiate myself with the local Salvadoran community and go off, not the beaten path, because I did definitely go to tourist hotspots. Like even the volcanoes I went to were like treks that lots of people have done. I went to my first Bitcoin graduation ceremony. That was quite cool. And that was in a tiny sort of town out in the outskirts of San Salvador. And that was definitely, that's not somewhere that you'd expect a lot of Bitcoin people to go to unless there's the Mi Primer Bitcoin thing taking place. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight that Bitcoin adoption is going to be a slow thing. But it's so cool that this country has adopted it, and you can pay for stuff in the majority of places with Bitcoin and sometimes Lightning. But I mean, my friend Obi Nwozu from Bediment, he puts it best. He basically says that like there was this tiny pocket in El Salvador that was using Bitcoin, but replaced the word Bitcoin as speaking Chinese. So there's this tiny pocket of El Salvador that was speaking Chinese in 2019, or just starting to take lessons in Chinese. And 2 years later, the president said, tomorrow, we're all going to speak Chinese. Okay, this is how it's going to be. We're going to roll out Chinese education everywhere. But they didn't. They just told everyone to speak Chinese. They said, download the Chinese app and then learn Chinese. Bye. You know, that's basically what happened. And then 2 years later, I turn up with a camera and I try to speak to people in Chinese. And a few people can say a few words. A few people can string a sentence together. And there's like a couple of native or fluent speakers of Chinese in El Zonte and a couple in San Salvador. But on the whole, the country does not speak Chinese. This is kind of what's happening in El Salvador. But in 5 years' time, there'll be even more people speaking Chinese. There'll be even more people interacting with it, able to understand it. And maybe there'll be even, you know, being paid in Chinese. I've no idea what paid in Bitcoin, sorry, not in Chinese. I've no idea how that will translate with this allegory I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin is a brand new language to a lot of people. I mean, even just talking to you about hashing just now shows how complex this damn thing is.
Absolutely.
And different people understand it in different ways. And some people just want to accept it and that's it. But some people want to go into praxeology and go down the rabbit hole and, you know, question everything about their entire existence and think that fiat is a scam. But, you know, some people are just like, whatever, accept it, move on, price goes up, happy days, you know. I would recommend people to watch it, and thank you for shilling it.
Yeah, no, it's honestly a great video, and it's a really good analogy, like the language compared to Bitcoin. And I liked with the video that you did keep it like authentic as well. You didn't cut out the scenes where there's a guy saying, I don't like Bitcoin. I think we never should have done it. Like there was one guy that was like, we're not ready for this. And easily could have just cut that out, but it was awesome that you kept that authentic, kept it in there. And there are other people that were saying it's incredible. I used it a month ago, used it yesterday. So that was really cool. You're also very bullish on Bitcoin adoption in Africa. For those who do not know the extent of the adoption that's going on in Africa with Bitcoin, tell us how the rapid adoption of Bitcoin there is happening.
So Africa as a concept is a silly concept. It's a bit like Europe. It's a load of lines in the sand that point towards various countries. And this is the first thing that Bitcoiners like to do about Africa is they're like, we're bullish on Africa. like it means anything. You know, Tunisia is, you know, Arabic and it's Muslim and it's Islamic, and then you've got South Africa, which is, you know, a mesh of all different sorts of cultures and is, you know, English first language. And the difference between the two countries is very stark, just like the differences between Morocco and the Congo is very stark as well. But when I say like I'm bullish on Africa, I'm sort of buying into this meme, you know, that sort of, it became kind of popular last year. But like I've lived in 6 or 7 different African countries, and they are, you know, but I mean, you'll soon discover with your trip to Europe that a lot of Europe feels quite similar. Like there's definitely like a European flavor or vibe. Like there are definitely some big differences. Like Eastern Europe is very different to say like, you know, Southern Spain, but it's got this sort of feel to it. Whereas Africa is like, you could be on a different planet at times. It's that different. So I just want to be clear that I'm massively stereotyping when I'm saying I'm bullish on Africa. But because Algeria, for example, Bitcoin is illegal. You can't hold it, you can't use it. However, the guy that makes my shorts for my YouTube channel, not the shorts that I wear, he's Algerian. So I'm sending Bitcoin to Algeria. He is stacking sats in Algeria. And the government, well, I'm sure they're not watching this podcast, but yeah, like it just goes to prove that, right, you can ban it, but people are still going to use it.
Exactly.
And like where I've used, yeah, and I've used Bitcoin in Tunisia, where again it's not quite illegal, but it's like frowned upon, I guess. Like Morocco is mining Bitcoin with solar energy, despite the fact that it is illegal there. In Senegal, there's a Bitcoin community, which is called Dakar Bitcoin Days, and they're doing the most amazing circular economy. They drew inspiration from Mike Peterson at Bitcoin Beach, what he did. And they've orange pilled like 9 or 10 restaurants, cafes, bars, surf shops right now. And I've been there twice. So I went there once last year in February, March, and then once in December. And in December, I shot this documentary there. And that's like a really cool Bitcoin sort of circular economy that's starting. And the sort of the co-founder, Nohu, he is the most amazing, humble Bitcoiner. I really look up to him and like admire his sort of approach to things. He's just, he really is doing it right. He's a bit like a sort of a Senegalese Mike Peterson in a way. And then in Cape Verde, there's a documentary coming out from there very soon. I spent 2 months there at the start of the year trying to talk about Bitcoin remittance, as I realized that there was a Bitcoin restaurant there, but it's also a hotel, real estate agency, and cafes as well. And so there's sort of pockets of Bitcoin adoption all around Africa. But it's nice that Africa has more of a voice. And that's kind of something that I'm trying to do with the Cointelegraph platform, is that trying to talk about Africa more and more in the hope that it inspires other Bitcoiners across Africa to be like, you know what? I can do this. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to start my own circular economy. And we've seen proof of that with Bitcoin Mountain in Cameroon, which is a new Bitcoin community that started. There's, of course, the Afro Bitcoin conference last year that were, you know, Jack Dorsey and Alex Gladstein, all that went to. But I don't know like what the impact of that has been on the ground. And I know that Accra is a harder place to live off Bitcoin from. What I get really passionate about is when you see plebs, just, well, you know, Bitcoiners around Africa just being like, right, I'm going to do my own Bitcoin circular economy. How do I do it? You know, what are the advice could I learn from other people? And you know, you see these pockets springing up. Like Bitcoin Akazi was another amazing one in South Africa, in a township in Southwest Africa. Like hopefully I'll be going there next year to do some surfing and obviously spend some sats. But yeah, so I'm bullish on Africa as well, because a lot of the currencies that are used there are completely crap. You know, I think there's a real need there. Like that's one of what the Senegal Bitcoin documentary tries to highlight, is the fact that the money is just useless. And the same with the Cape Verde one as well. There's 3 currencies in use in Cape Verde. It just makes no sense. And you know, Bitcoin fixes this.
It's amazing. Joe, thank you so much for jumping on a call today, man. It's been amazing chatting with you. Before you go off, can you share with us like any upcoming projects or videos you're working on, and also where people can find you on social media, YouTube, all that?
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, pleasure to hang out with you, Bailey. And do hit me up for your road trip, because as you mentioned, I'll happily put you in contact with either the Bitcoin communities or the place where you want to spend Bitcoin. And then so I'm Joe Nakamoto on all socials, and if it's not Joe Nakamoto, it'll be Joe Nakamoto 69, because someone's already taken my handle. So I thought, why not use 69 instead? And upcoming projects, me personally on my YouTube channel / Twitter, there's a Bitcoin Beat video coming from Prague, where I try to give out Bitcoin in Prague. And then there's on Cointelegraph's YouTube channel, there will be a documentary from Real Bedford, the Bitcoin Football Club, coming out soon. There's also one from Cape Verde, all about Bitcoin and remittance. And finally, there will be, should I even talk about it? I don't know. There's some stuff coming out from Latin America very soon as well. And then I've just forgotten one. But subscribe to Cointelegraph, or don't subscribe to Cointelegraph. Just subscribe to my stuff, and I'll show you because then you the reason I say that is not to pump my own stuff. It's just that so you can avoid all the crypto stuff and just focus on the Bitcoin stuff. Subscribe to the Bitcoin version of Cointelegraph, which is basically my content. More Bitcoin videos coming out soon.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Joe. It was great chatting to you.
Cheers, mate, and I'll let you go for your dinner. Sorry about that.